We are going to go ahead and get started because we believe starting and ending on time, and we have a lot to cover. So, hi and welcome, everyone. It's so lovely to see so many familiar faces and as well as new faces. So I know many of you, but for those I don't know, I'm Janine Vanderberg. I was the co-founder of Changing the Narrative, longtime anti-ageism activist and pro-age inclusion in the workforce champion, rooted in my over 3.5 prior decades of working on social change. These days, I'm focusing my role as CEO of Encore Roadmap, and Encore Roadmap basically does three things, and I've had the opportunity to do all of them this week. Educate employers and anyone else who will listen about the very strong business case for older workers and intergenerational teams to help older Encore seekers seek roadmaps for what's next, which is kind of what we're doing here today. I personally am not a job coach, but I try to surround myself with the best people who know how this works. And in my spare time, I advocate for public policies that are age friendly. As co-founder of Changing the Narrative, I know that our monthly coffee chats that we used to do were something that people look forward to. We no longer have funding, so we can't do this through Changing the Narrative. But due to popular demand, that is all of you who were emailing me, I decided to start doing monthly coffee chats on my own. So this is what we're going to do every month. We're going to bring in an author and or other expert. And usually what I'm going to do, this is not what we're going to do today, but I want to let all of you who are planning to come to coffee chats know how this is usually going to work. I will interview our expert for about 15 to 20 minutes. We will record those portions, but a lot of the coffee chat is for all of you to interact with each other, get to know other people who care about ending ageism, spending time together. And so we will do short breakout rooms in most coffee chats, and you can reflect, chat with others, share resources, that kind of thing. And then we'll come back as a whole group and share some insights and takeaways that we can all take. Now, this is in line with my personal mantra, don't just talk about it, be about it, as well as we are the leaders we've been waiting for. Okay, I've said all that, but we're going to do things differently this time, and here's why. I asked all of you to basically send in questions when you registered, and as of last night, I got over 65 questions from you all, and additional questions and registrations were coming in this morning. So I want to spend, what you really want to do is hear from Lisa. So we're probably not going to go to breakout rooms. If we have time at the end, I'll ask you if you have additional questions and put them in the chat. There are two categories of questions that came in that we're not dealing with in this session today. Today, we're going to focus on job seeking. Many of you asked legal questions about workplace age discrimination, and we are bringing in, oh, and I see he's here, Gary Phelan. Do you want to wave? Gary Phelan will be, who is a lawyer specializing in this, will be joining us on March 7th. I'll be sending you all details about that. So save your questions about legal aspects for Gary on March 7th. Also received a number of questions about self-employment options, gig economy, and that kind of thing. Our coffee chat on March 27th is going to feature Jan Golden of Age Friendly Vibes. Many of you know her as creating anti-ageist birthday cards and other gear. But what you may not know is she also was an entrepreneur who started this business after age 60. So hoping that you can go to either or both of those to get those other questions. So our rules for today are pretty simple. Please stay on mute because the number of you who registered, there were a lot, and put additional questions in the chat. And most importantly, if you have other resources that would be helpful to your fellow job seekers, please put them in the chat as well. I'll be compiling them and sending them out along with a recording of this. So with that, are we ready,
Yes.
Lisa?
No.
Okay, and please do keep yourself on mute, if you would. So with that, I'm going to introduce my friend and colleague, Lisa Jensen, who's the Career Services Program Manager at Workforce Boulder County. And I first met Lisa in my role directing Changing the Narrative when she approached me about doing a workshop about success strategies for people age 50 and over. And I was like, hell yes to that. And it was amazing. And then she did a couple of subsequent ones that were really well received. I promised Lisa this time, because she's so busy, that she wouldn't have to prepare a workshop, that I would basically queue up your questions to her. So that's the format today. But Lisa, I'd like, if you would, to start by maybe telling a little bit about yourself, your journey. I'm handing you the mic, my friend.
All righty. So I started out my career as a registered nurse, and I quickly found that I really liked management more than I love nursing, but I liked management more. And I really liked program and process. So I wanted to work on systems and how could we do things better and make our lives easier. So what that did for me is that I ended up working in a lot of different roles for University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus in leadership positions, building new programs or new aspects of programs. And I loved doing it. And I did it for over 23 years. And the last program I worked on was it was a job hub to help people in the surrounding community to get jobs on the Anschutz campus. And so through this project, I learned a whole lot of HR. I learned about hiring processes and barriers to people getting hired and in-demand jobs and skills that needed to match it, all that stuff. And so this program was really just ramping up and starting to show a lot of success when COVID hit. And if you remember, when COVID hit, every organization stopped hiring. And people got laid off and programs shut down because everything needed to corral and focus on solving the COVID crisis. And so my program, the program I was working on, got closed as well, and I got laid off. I was 62 years old at the time. And because throughout my career, I had gotten all my jobs by just, a colleague was starting up this new statewide initiative. Hey, Lisa, you want to help? I'm like, that sounds fun. So I had no problem getting hired. It never was an obstacle to me. So I'm like, this is going to be fine. Well, I hadn't seen COVID before, and I hadn't seen job seeking at 62 years old before. And so I went throughout the process of applying to job after job after job after job and nothing happening. And I applied to over 70 jobs. And I thought, well, what I need is a new credential because my credentials are way old. So because I had done so much human resources kind of work, I thought I'll get that HR credential because that seems to be in demand. So I studied, I passed the exam, I got the credential, and then I started applying for HR jobs. I still pretty much got nowhere until I finally discovered one thing that I needed to do with my resume that I'm going to tell you about towards the end of our time together, this trick. It is a trick, but it wasn't all I needed to learn, but it was a really important part of what I needed to learn to make my resume relevant to the current processes. I also needed to learn some interviewing skills because I hadn't needed to interview before. And I thought, I'll be fine. I know how to do this. But I didn't. I didn't know how to interview in today's short attention span market. So I had a few things to learn. But once I learned some of these things, the next 3 jobs that I applied for, I got invited to interview. And of those 3 jobs, I got hired into this one. So in that process, I learned about how mysterious and how confounding and how frustrating and humiliating that for me, it was 14 months. I had never faced that much difficulty over such a sustained amount of time with really no feedback, why is this happening? And why isn't Why isn't something else happening? And so that's what we want to talk about today, about how to make something different happen. And I know all of us have our own unique path in this process, and that you're here today probably because you have your unique path in trying to get hired in as an older job seeker. And so I hope we can come up with some helpful strategies and some hope for you to try some new things to make something different happen for you.
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your story. And that's why I've always found you such a credible source on this, because not only do you know how to do it from helping so many job seekers, but you've lived this yourself. You used the word hope. And, one of my mantras for this year has been from the writer Raymond Williams, how can we make hope possible instead of despair convincing? So I'm wondering if you could share how during this process, and how do you encourage other job seekers when you're kind of out there and things are looking grim to keep hope, to keep optimistic? Can you share any tips about that before we get started in all of the many questions that were queued up by people attending?
Well, I think this is the most important question, and it's the most important job for everyone who is trying to get hired, is to manage your hope. So when I was first laid off, I happened to read this article on managing chronic depression. I didn't have chronic depression at the time, but I was curious about, well, what do they say about managing chronic depression? And I thought, possibly, if this goes harder than I expect, I might need these tips on how to manage myself. So the tip that I took away from that article is that an effective strategy for managing chronic depression is that every day you do something positive and you do something productive. The positive thing can be anything from going for a walk, going to a flower store just to look at the flowers, looking at your bird feeder. It can be anything that is a positive, uplifting experience for you. And the productive thing needs to be something besides your job search. This is not about the job search at all. It's doing some physical activity that is productive, such as changing the sheets on your bed or fixing that loose cabinet hinge. Some physical activity each day that is productive. Because there's something about that experience of just accomplishing something, being able to see and experience the results of it, that is uplifting. So that is one thing that is just a very simple strategy. The second one is not so simple, but it is really important. And this is to recognize and accept and acknowledge the feelings that you're experiencing in this process, because they're huge and they might not be like anything else you've experienced in your life, and they're prolonged. And so you need to find a safe space to have your feelings and vent about how unfair this is, how ridiculous this is. I remember saying to my husband, I don't want to be good at job seeking. I don't want to develop that skill. I want a job. And, the frustration of having to learn these very specific steps just was so frustrating. So you need a place where you can let those feelings out, whether it's a journal, a buddy, a spouse, somewhere, your cat. You need to find a room for those feelings, because if you don't find a room for them, they're going to be in your daily interactions. When you get that interview, they're going to bubble out, and you don't want to do that. You want to be able to bring your very best self to that interview, to writing that cover letter. You want those feelings to have a room of their own. And if naming them helps, we've heard from a lot of job seekers just having permission to name those feelings, write them down, yell at them. You gotta let them be acknowledged.
Yeah.
And then they will let go a little bit. You'll revisit them, One of the things I used to do was I love pruning our trees. And my husband was like, quick, we need to get you a job soon before all those branches are gone.
Or there are no
So,
trees left. Yeah.
so, so anyway, just managing your feelings in some way, giving them a space. These are really important jobs for you to do when facing this challenge.
Okay. Lisa, thanks so much for kind of starting out with that and layering it in your own experience. So what I've done, everybody who sent in questions, I put them in what I call clumps and they made sense to me. I'm queuing them up to Lisa in clumps. If you feel like there's some, and the basically, how do we confront ageism? How do we, resume tips, LinkedIn tips, interviewing tips, all of those kind of things. So we're going to get through all of those. And we're going to start with, but if another question comes up, feel free to put it in the chat. If we have time, we'll get to it. So let's talk about, let's face that ageism elephant in the room. We know AARP Transamerica have done research that shows that ageism in hiring is real, and certainly the testimony of many people here is that ageism in hiring is real. Lisa, what are some of the practical, concrete strategies for overcoming ageism in the job search? Some people asked, how do we pitch our value as experienced workers in the application process and point out to employers the competitive advantages of experienced talent? So thoughts on that that you can share.
Yeah. So, first, I'd like to name what ageism is saying about you, about me, about us, is that we're not relevant. We're not relevant anymore in this workplace. And, or if you're very young, you're not relevant yet. So that's the message of ageism. So we're going to fight that message by being relevant. And the way you will be relevant is as you are looking for a particular kind of job, make sure that you research the company you are applying to as thoroughly as possible. Look at the About Us tabs at the top of that website. See who we are. Look at who they're hiring. Read about them. Find them on LinkedIn. Get to know the lingo. Read the mission statement. Immerse yourself in that company's world as much as possible. And if you can, find out what are some of their pain points? What are they trying to accomplish? And how might my skill set be something really valuable to them? Because we know that your skill set is really valuable. So find where it's going to ring bells for them. So learn everything you can about the company, the mission statement, and think about your specific skills. Give your skills words. So if you're really good at event planning, if you're really great at organizing, if your project management has shown tangible success, figure out how to say those things in outcomes words. Don't use, I have over 20 years experience of being primary education classroom teacher. Talk about what you were able to accomplish rather than the years you spent doing what you're doing. So maybe I increased sales, or I put on twice as many events, or I increased attendance to these particular sessions. So think about concrete ways to talk about your work so that you are relevant to their concerns. And then that is going to diffuse some of the concern that they might have about how old is this person, or how long is she going to stay in the workplace? So that's what I would suggest are key ways to be very relevant in your conversations when you get to the interview.
And Lisa, let me ask you, I've heard people say that not only should you put the outcome, but when you can to put it in numerical format. So not
Mhm.
just I increase sales, but I increase sales by
By so much.
50%.
Yeah.
And you agree.
Yeah.
We received a number of questions about a specifically ageist practice in application process that is now illegal in Colorado, but I know we have people from across the US. Those applications that require you to put graduation dates or other age identifiers, so in a way you can now in Colorado, as a result of work that many of us did, that is now illegal, but we know it's still prevalent in many states. What do people do when they're forced to put that in?
You have to put it in. I mean, if it's in Colorado, you can actually call the HR contact. I did that once when I was applying for a job, and I knew it was not allowed, and it was not about age of graduation. It was something else. Oh, it was salary.
Yeah.
So we're not allowed in Colorado to ask for your previous salary. And so this application I was filling out had that question in there, and I couldn't move on until I filled it out. So I actually contacted the HR person, and they said, "Oh, we're sorry. We're trying to get rid of that, because they knew it was wrong." Um, but I mean, if the form requires it, yeah, you
Right.
just have to do it and
And I'll
hope.
send everybody some information as well about the Colorado law because that just went into effect in July of this past year. But you can complain if you're in Colorado and somebody is asking for a graduation date, you can complain anonymously, which is really nice. And anyway, but yeah, if I really want to encourage everybody in every state to pass a similar law so we can eliminate that form of age bias. We received, I'm sure this is not a surprise for you, a ton of questions about how do we optimize resumes, LinkedIn, application language. So I collapsed it into this question. How do we ensure that our resumes, our LinkedIn profiles are current, relevant? You talked a little bit about relevant and designed to get past AI screenings and in front of real decision makers. And I also feel like I got a number of questions, and Pat put something in the chat that I sensed a lot of frustration. People who have multiple degrees, they've got terrific work experience, but they can't get an interview. So,
Mhm.
what is what can people do? How do you optimize that resume, LinkedIn? And somebody asked also specifically, um, how do you make sure resume, LinkedIn matched? Talk to us about all of that.
So I was a LinkedIn resistor. I did not want to create a LinkedIn profile. I didn't want to pay attention to it. I didn't want to build it. I was like, why should I do that? And then I realized that it could be my friend. So your resume is going to need to be 1 to 2 pages, right? I'm sure you've heard that. And your LinkedIn can be where you put in stuff like volunteer work, where you maybe served on a homeowners association board for 5 years, or have a hobby in creative writing. You can put all of the things that make you interesting as a person on your LinkedIn profile, along with your accomplishments. So in the past, the person who was looking at your resume was the hiring manager. So that hiring manager had, job content knowledge. They knew what the job is that they're hiring into. They knew the skills that they needed. And then they see that oh, she also volunteers at the school district doing, playground duty, and we want to get an initiative going in the schools. So maybe this would be a good fit. Those days are long, long past us. Now, the first entity to see your resume is either an overworked HR professional who has no knowledge really of what the job is really about. They just have this job description that they have to match to, or it's AI doing the very same thing. AI has a job description that is going to match to. So unfortunately, this sounds very simplistic, but it is simply a word matching thing for your resume. So the job you apply for has to use words out of the job posting. And I can show you how to do this in a fun way later if we have time. But basically, if the job posting says that, we need to support board of directors, we need to do event planning, we need to do community outreach. If those words are used a lot in the job posting, you need to use them a lot. Don't show your English language skills and come up with more creative ways to say it. That won't get you where you need to be. You need to use those exact words because it is simply a matching game. Once your resume matches that job post, has to match that way, then it gets moved forward for consideration of interviewing. And at that point, maybe somebody like the hiring manager might take a look at your resume. So you don't need to put a lot of bells and whistles on your resume. You need to just be very focused with the job post that you are going for. And that means you have to create a unique resume for every single job you apply for because the words are probably not going to match every single job you apply for. Now, on LinkedIn, you can have more of a master profile of who you are. And that can be sort of like your resource library, where you say, oh gosh, I worked on that project with the fire department a year ago, and they're looking, so you can use it as your own library of yourself. And then other people will too. And the other way that you can use LinkedIn to your benefit is when you're researching that company. I talked about researching and getting to know everybody there and that who we are, especially like the directors and the leaders of the company. You want to look for them in LinkedIn because the more you know about them, the more you can essentially name drop things that are cross-matching. So let's say I ride bikes with a company that donates to Greenhouse Scholars. And then I see that this person who serves on the board of directors is something at Greenhouse Scholars. Then during my interview or on my LinkedIn, I can make sure to mention that I am connected to Greenhouse Scholars. So you're not making stuff up. You're just bringing forward what employers are looking for. And so you
I
need to.
love stalking people on LinkedIn, Lisa. I'm glad I'm not alone. Yep. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's a great. I have a question for you, and this came up a lot. Cover letters or not? I hear some people saying cover letters are old school, they're outdated, and others saying that's the way to set yourself apart. Your thoughts?
I've asked a room full of HR professionals this question, and half of them said cover letter, half of them said no cover letter. I never read them. So, the right answer is which one you choose. I think that a cover letter is needed if you are doing something like pivoting, that you are switching from being a project manager to an IT specialist. Then you need to summarize briefly how this change came about. You have all these jobs in project management, and now you want a job in cybersecurity. So to me, that's where you do a pitch for saying why you're applying for this job. I personally did them because I wanted to say why I was enthusiastic and that I wanted the job. That was what HR professionals told me, is that in that cover letter, say you want the job, say why you want the job, because I love climate change issues. I want to work on them. So say, be compelling.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, as someone who hired tons of people over a lifetime, I always liked those kind of cover letters that told me, why did you care for this company? Why do you care about this issue? And that kind of thing. And I'm seeing someone saying there was something in the cover letter and it just popped up. I'll get back to it later. You mentioned this idea of career transitions and how do you position yourself? And we got a lot of questions about that. Um, a number of people brought up the idea of career transition, especially after an absence for the workforce, because I think as we're older, we may have stepped out to caregive for older family members, for example. What advice do you have for older workers who are looking to transition into new careers? And a couple of people said, especially for those of us, and I think it's the bulk of us who necessarily don't have the executive level experience. It's not like I'm the corporate CEO and now I'm starting a nonprofit kind of thing. We've had regular jobs and we want to transition in something else. And especially for people who are maybe exploring not only new kind of jobs, but new industries. What kind of
Mhm.
advice?
Mhm. Um, so several things. Um, it is true that recent certifications may help you get attention. Um, so my degree was in nursing way, way long ago, and it wasn't even relevant to what I'm doing now. So having a certification that was fresh and related to the job I was applying for was meaningful and did get me into an HR interview. So the certification is one idea. Um, Another, and so how do you decide about what certification to go for? So if you really want this job in early childhood education, you want this particular role, and you go look at job posts for that role, look at what certifications they're asking for and go for them. And that's what I did because there were a lot of different HR programs I could have chosen. But I saw the ones that were most frequently mentioned, which certifications they were looking for before I invested my time and money into getting those certifications. And speaking of money, some our workforce centers do have funds that may be available for you if you're going back to work to help pay for that tuition. If you qualify for some grant, you may be able to get that course paid for. Um,
And
so
Lisa, can I just
yeah.
interrupt you for a moment? Because I know from our previous sessions together that a lot of people don't necessarily know that there are workforce development centers in their communities, that they're free, that they have access to knowledgeable people like you. Can you give me the two-sentence version of what is a workforce development center and how does maybe someone find one in their community?
So the easiest way to find it is Workforce Center near me. They are funded by federal dollars to help people get to work and in demand jobs. And so workforce centers will help you with your resume. There are free workshops. Ours, and I know across the state of Colorado, the workshops that are offered are virtual and are very high quality, and I highly recommend them. They have everything from career exploration, LinkedIn profile. I'm so not good at LinkedIn. I sort of passed over that question. You might have noticed, but our LinkedIn profile workshop is great. And there's all sorts of resources that are shared through those workshops.
And these
You
are
can,
free, correct?
yes, they're all free. You can walk into a workforce center and get help from a service navigator in learning how to use new job search tools. How do you find the jobs you're looking for? So they can help you with everything related to seeking a job. And then my team does the grant management. So we help people qualify for grants and then we pay for them to go to school. So we have several people that we're paying for becoming a medical assistant. We have some project management certifications that we're funding. So workforce centers are an incredible resource for you to learn about and go explore one near you because they're fantastic.
They are, I think they're terrific. And everyone, people are putting resources in the chat fast and furious. Don't worry about having to keep up with them all because I am going to send every single one of those out there. So just keep putting them in. This is fantastic. And you're such a great resource for another.
Oh, Janine, before we go to another question, there was something else I wanted to offer for people wanting to pivot to a different career and how to do that. One really cool way that I never tried this, but I found out from it recently, is to volunteer. If you can volunteer in any capacity in the type of field that you want to get into, then you get insider trading knowledge, you get relationships, and you get to build your language around that career. And there is a great resource. It's called the Senior Community Service Employment Program.
Yeah.
And they will, if you go and say, I want to volunteer to work in school districts, then they will learn about you and match you to volunteer experiences. We have two volunteers here in the Workforce Center in Longmont and Boulder that are helping us with our front desk work. And so they're getting admin assistant experience through this program and they're learning, do I really like this work or not?
Right.
So volunteering, don't shortchange that because it could be a great way to transition to another field.
And I'm hoping that that program gets continued funding. I think it's part of the federal budget package on March 14th. So everyone, if you want more information, reach out to me individually. We won't talk about that here. Um, there's a reverse kind of question, career transition. So we talked about maybe somebody who didn't have like the big important job, but suppose you had the big important job and now you want to downshift a bit. You sort of like either I don't want to work that hard or I don't want that level of responsibility at this life stage. How can you communicate to an employer that you're going to be, a serious candidate, you're going to show up, you're going to do a great job, but it looks like you're deliberately downshifting? Any thoughts about that?
So my first thought is that make sure that your resume is not going back more than 10 or 15 years. Don't show that you've been 35 years at IBM. Just go back 10 or 15 years so that, the first impression is not, who is this person of great length of employment? Um, and then the second one is to really take a little time to think about your values. Why do you want to downshift? Think about the things that you want in your life, not the things you want less of. I want more involvement in the things that I care about. So think about what is it you want out of this new kind of employment for you. And this is where I hate to say the word AI, but I'm learning it can also be our friend. I was like, oh, this is terrible. But AI, you can ask AI to help you describe what it means to be a carpenter. And AI will come up with all these words and skills about what it takes to be a carpenter. And then you can use those words in your cover letter about I'm transitioning from being, the CEO at Greenhouse Scholars to teaching people how to build tiny homes. And so you can use AI to help you say what you mean. And then when you use value focused words, people, it hits the heartstrings. So it's not, I want to become a senior project manager. It's I want to affect change in this way in the world because I care about our future generation. So think about the values because people respond to that.
And Lisa, it's interesting you bring that up because there's some really interesting research that shows that that values thinking is really what people can connect on more than the things like years of experience or that kind of thing, but kind of shared values, shared passion, and that kind of thing. So thank you for bringing that up. Any tips on kind of some people expressed, I know I want to do something different or I want to get back in, but I'm not sure what I want to do. I think one person said, you know, I'm going to be 53 or 50 or something, and I don't have a lot of time to figure out, what I want to be when I grow up. Although I will say at age 72, my daughters still tell me I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. What are there particular assessments or self-discovery tools or processes that you recommend, and how do people go about finding those?
I think that is a great question. And to the question about, I don't have much time, that time's going to go by, whether you use it to take that course in basket weaving or not. I mean, and maybe a year and a half from now, you're going to be a Pilates teacher because you decided to invest in that. If you don't invest in it, you're just going to be a year and a half older. I mean, it's so think about time is your friend and that you can invest in exploring different things. So, uh, so the question is, how do I decide? So we do have some career exploration workshops. That's one way to do it. But the tool I found most helpful was Strengths Finders. It is a book that you have to purchase, or you can get it for free from your workforce center. Um, you have to have your own copy because there's a code at the beginning of the book, and you go and take an online test. And that test tells you your top 5 strengths. And when I did that for myself, I was like, wow, if I had known to focus on these things and that I could build these strengths.
Yeah.
One of my strengths, it's so embarrassing, is self-assurance.
Yeah. Why is that embarrassing? It's a strength.
It's like I'm just yeah, yeah. So anyway, but then ways to build that strength were really surprising and appealing to me. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to take, do this and do that to build that strength and realize that this is a good thing. It's not something I should be, trying to shove into another way of being in the world. So in my opinion, Strengths Finders is a great one. There's also something called U Science. It's kind of a very lengthy test. There's a lot of math in it. But it also gives really good results. And I think that's worth looking into as well.
I'm a total fan of StrengthsFinder, and I think
Mhm.
I've taken it several times, and I think
Mhm.
it's great at any age. And if anyone, again, has suggestions on assessments they've taken that they think are really useful, go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat so we can compile and send them out. And by the way, my strengths are futuristic and activator, and my team used to say it's Janine saw what had to happen, and then she was running around asking, why didn't that happen yesterday? So yeah, there's always a shadow side to strengths as well. Um, let's talk a bit about interview strategies and some of those potential challenging questions. Um, so if you have any overall tips for interview strategies, so let's assume we've done what we needed to do with LinkedIn resume, we got it through the screening hurdle, we get invited for the interview. Best approach, so overall strategies, but best approach for answering those tough questions like, so when are you planning to retire? How do you reinforce your value and your commitment as an older candidate?
So yeah, that is such a squirrely little question there, isn't it? Um, so I don't think they're really allowed to ask you when do you plan to retire, but they still do.
But they
So
still do. I mean, and
and
that, uh, uh,
yeah,
well,
so
in
you're
any
there.
tips, I mean, I frequent the kind of things that people tell me that they've been asked, and I'm like, that's an illegal question, but
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
in the
Well,
middle
at least
of
they're
an
not going to
interview,
ask you if you're planning to get pregnant. There's an upside.
there you go.
So, I
Yeah.
do think you should try to approach it with a little bit of humor. And you don't have to answer the question you're asked. You can answer the question you wish you were asked. And so you can say, well, I don't have any plans to do that anytime soon. I am so excited about the opportunity to contribute in this way. And my years of, my experience, as an older, job seeker, I have, developed a lot of stability, I have a high work ethic. I'm very reliable. So all the things, use it as an opportunity to brag about yourself and say the things that you know are true about that make you a really great employee. And so in my mind, just brush it off with a little humor and move on to what you want to say.
Okay. So we know that there's a lot of ageism in the tech field. And um, and there are a lot of highly skilled older professionals with backgrounds in tech. So one of the questions, and we actually received several questions along this line, what industries in general do you feel are more open to older workers and where they can leverage their experience and insights in tech, but maybe into another field, not specifically in tech? Thoughts about that?
Ooh, the tech question is really hard. Tech is really volatile right now. Some of the big companies are doing layoffs, and yet we still are hearing that senior roles, senior program developers, are still high in demand, and we are still helping people go back to school for some of those certifications because they do meet the in-demand criteria. Um, I think um, it's this is just a really challenging one. As far as companies that are more open to hiring older workers, um, we know that nonprofits tend to be more open-minded about hiring older workers because they know that they've developed a wide repertoire of skills. So anybody who's gotten as old as us has done a lot of different things. And so that is appealing to a company with a smaller team because maybe you can do marketing, maybe you can also do communications. And so looking at smaller companies and nonprofits is going to be a little bit more likely to succeed.
And I've seen that as well, that small businesses very often appreciate what an older, experienced individual can bring to the team, not only in terms of kind of skills and insight, but also those connections. Like there was a particular startup in Denver that deliberately went out and sought out some older people as part of their team because they knew over time, right, we build up all of these connections, which are good, for sales, for extending, and for building up the company. So those are potential areas to look. Somebody asked, are there specific jobs that offer the greatest potential for satisfaction and income for older workers? I'm personally thinking satisfaction is highly individualistic. It's like what you like to do. But any thoughts you have of specific job categories as you've worked with older workers that maybe they're gravitating to more?
I think, like you say, Janine, it is very individual. And I think thinking back to some of your early favorite jobs that you had maybe as a teenager, um, or activities that you had in young adulthood that you just loved, and think about what is it that you loved about doing that. And something that I'm starting to do now, I've sewn. I've been a sewer.
I am too. How did I not know that about you? There you go. Okay.
So I've sewn all my life, and I recently, um, to manage my spirit, manage my sense of well-being and enjoyment of life, I started a textile art class. So it's doing something completely different with textiles that I really love to hold and to cherish, and I'm stitching, I'm using techniques that I know, but I'm doing something completely different. So I think going back to your roots, going back to the things that brought you joy early in life before you started thinking about what I have to do, what I need to do, what I should do, all those things kind of maybe squashed out some of the things that bring you joy. Now's your time to bring them back to life.
Okay. We're going to have to talk online. I had no idea. I'm trying to find time to play with pattern and cloth again as well. Let's talk about some salary stuff. So, I got two versions of the same question. It was very much like the career transition question. Um, and I think this actually applies to people of any age. I don't think this is older workers specific. Um, we know these are trying times. Things were already bad in tech, and now we've got the federal layoffs and the whole mess. Should we be trying to negotiate a better starting salary when we get a job offer?
Ooh, that's a loaded one as well.
I
It
tell
depends.
you, the questions that came out of this group, I was like, whoa, like talk about, yeah, get to the heart of
You
it.
guys
Yeah.
are on it. Um, so if you're applying to a government job, you're not really going to be able to negotiate much because they have very sort of written in stone salary bands, and they use a particular kind of math to count up the years of experience you have doing this particular role. So that's what I encountered when I interviewed for this job. Like I mentioned, I was in leadership roles on the Anschutz campus for 23 years. So my salary had gone up. And so when I was looking at the salary offer here, I was like, oh, it's not what I used to make. And then it's like, but it's more than what I'm making now as a
That kind of answer is also another version of the question. I mean, several people said, so should we simply be prepared to accept a lower salary?
it's a very individual need. I think it is worthwhile to consider what you need and what you want. and those are probably two different numbers, but you have to navigate that, can I, hold out to get more of what I want, or is what I need enough? And can I live on that? So those are really important questions to ask yourself and write those numbers down. And then when you are asked, if you are asked on your job application, what salary do you expect? You can give a range. But now you should be able to see on job postings the salary range. So you will know whether you're in the ballpark of what you need and want, and not be surprised.
Okay. Um, all right. I'm going to switch briefly because I do want to give you time to do that demonstration at the end. There were some questions about AI and technology and job seeking. What are the benefits and risk of using AI tools like ChatGPT for job applications? And how can job seekers leverage these tools without losing their authentic voice? I see my friend Josephine here, who is always like, no to the AI tools, garbage in, garbage out, in terms of things like cover letter. I also know some people use them. Do you have thoughts about that? And then my follow-up question is, when I look at all the future of work reports, it seems like if we as older job seekers have not mastered some element of AI, if we don't show that we have some kind of working knowledge, we might as well not even apply. That's my take on it, but I would love your take as well.
Yeah.
So
And
those are two questions, and the only thing they have in common is they both have AI in the title of the
yeah,
question.
yeah. So AI can definitely be helpful. So you can use AI in two ways. You can write up your cover letter or your resume by yourself with your own words and make it in your voice. And then you can ask AI what, to improve this cover letter. And you can then see what it suggests. And maybe it'll have some valuable tips. And you can then just, weave it together and use the parts you like and leave the rest. You can do it the opposite. You can ask ChatGPT to write a cover letter for an admin assistant job and then see what they say and go, that's not the way I would say it at all. But consider why it's saying it the way it is. Ask yourself, is there something fresh in this version that I maybe should consider using? Because remember, back at the beginning, we talked about you need to show yourself as relevant. So you need to be using words that are relevant in today's world, and AI might help you with that.
Okay, great answer. All right, what I'm going to do, because we have 7 minutes left, I am going to give you sharing screen permissions. Is that what you need in order to? So that means I think I've got to unpin us. Now I've got to unpin myself. Ah, I'm not sure how to do that. Um, what I want you to do, Lisa, is if you would go ahead and share screen, well, and do a demonstration of this, how you compare resume to the job announcement. That would be lovely.
Okay, can you see my screen that has a job posting on it?
I can. Is there a way that you can make the job posting larger
Yeah.
for those of us who, even with reading glasses?
Okay. So this is an admin assistant position. I just Googled admin assistant position on the internet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the bulk of this job posting. I'm not going to go down into all their, where they are located and all that stuff. So I'm basically just going to copy and paste this front page. So I'm going to make this a little smaller so I can get that done. So I'm copying and pasting these words that I think are relevant to what we're doing. Okay, now I'm going to close that screen and I want to go to another screen. Now I'm wondering, can you see the screen that I'm?
A tag crowd? Yes.
Yeah. Whew, we're getting good at this, Janine. Okay, so I just copied and pasted from that job posting, right? And now I'm gonna paste it. And so I just put those words in there, all crammed together. And now I'm going to hit visualize. And now it says, look at the words that came forward here. So administrative, board, nonprofits, support. So I'm going to make sure in my resume that I say something about nonprofits, that I say something about, supporting a board, that I say something about the community that this nonprofit is serving, how I have offered support to various, 5 executives. I am going to use their words. So, some of them are not really relevant, but you get the idea that you get the main words for this particular job post that are going to get you through AI or that poor, overworked HR professional.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to me that that's so important, Lisa. And I'll put the link to Tag Crowd in the resources that go out. Lisa, I'm trying to find you so I can spotlight you again. And of course, I there you are. Okay, I'm adding your, okay, I want
There
you back
we
on screen. There you go.
go.
No, I'm
I'm
going to
so
send
good
that
at
out because I think that that is, it's so important. It's relatively simple to do. And I have heard directly from HR managers who are overworked, right? Because we know so many people are applying for every job that they may have 6 seconds to screen. Nobody is, what you said before, and I was the kind of person who read through every cover letter, every word of every resume, read through all the attachments, whatever people sent me, because I always wanted to find exactly the right fit. And I know that's not the way the world works anymore, right? So being able to do that at least gets you through the algorithm, right? Or the ATS system.
exactly.
Okay. Lisa, are there any final tips? And people may have put in questions on topics that we haven't addressed up in but there are so many comments that I can't see them. So if you have a burning question that you want to hear from Lisa right now, if I can ask you to put it in the chat right now. But Lisa, meanwhile, any kind of closing tips, anything that you want to suggest? And again, I'm looking for final questions.
So I talked to my workforce team here that sees clients more directly than I do, and they said to find a buddy, find someone else who is in a job search mode and go have coffee with them once a week or something, because you're not alone. You are so far from being alone. I mean, on this call alone, there's so many people in the same situation. So connect with them.
Yeah, terrific. And a number of people also asked questions about what were examples of age-inclusive workplace culture and that kind of thing. This is something that I talk to employers all the time as well. So I'll send some quick thoughts, but I'll also let you know when I have an upcoming workshop on this topic that is open to the public. So hopefully what everyone has gotten from today, not only from Lisa, but from all of the amazing things in the chat that I'm going to go ahead and share probably tomorrow. I'm going to edit the recording, send out the recording and the tips in some sort of format. I'm seeing a question here. What about those of us who were freelancers, government contracts, etc.? We will talk about that, Pilar, in our March 27th session. So 2 sessions coming up I want you to know about. I will also include links to them when I send out a follow-up email to this. March 7th, we're going to talk about the legal aspect of age discrimination, that kind of thing, with lawyer Gary Phelan. And we're going to talk about everything related to freelancing, gig economy, self-employment, how you do it, what you've done. If you, and I, Pilar, am empathetic. I have been self-employed all my life, except when I was in high school and worked for my dad's hardware store. So I get it. And I would not know what to do if I had to try to do things in a resume and explain my jobs. So thank you all so much. Um, Please figure out how to support each other. And if anybody has any suggestions about that or wants to connect, when you get an email from me, if you're willing to share your email with other people who might want to get together, just go ahead and let me know and I'll send an email to all of you. Thank you all so much. Good luck. I really, really appreciate your being here.
Yeah, thank you all for
I so
attending and
appreciate
listening.
your willing to lend your time and your insight to this. Thanks so much.
And all this good stuff in the chat.
I
This is
know the chat
fantastic.
has blown up. The chat has blown up. Thank you all so much.
All
Take
right,
care.
thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye.
Thank you, Janine.
Hey,
Bye-bye.
Bob. Good to
Bye.
see ya. Good to see ya.
Hey, man. Good luck.
Luann, hey,
Sounds
it's so
good.
fun to see my
Yes.
buddies here. Hey, good to see
Yeah, I'm sorry,
you.
Janine, real quick. I thought it started at 1. It
No, it
didn't.
ended at 1. Yeah, it
Oh,
was noon to 1. I
sorry, I was involved
no,
in
we all
another
do
one.
that. We all do that.
That's
I was out in Chicago doing some workshops and I made the mistake of putting things on my calendar when I was in
Oh,
Chicago and then it came
yeah,
back
I'm
and
sorry. I will
yeah, no,
put
it's
it
all
away.
right. Luann, you can listen to the recording. It was great. Hope you're well. Hope everything is great in Montrose.
Yes, we're still ticking away here, but thank
Okay,
you.
okay.
Yeah,
sounds
all right.
good. Okay, take
Bye-bye.
care. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Ciao.
and end this. Okay, take Lisa, thanks so much. I so appreciate
Lisa, thank you.
it.
Thank
Rock
you.
star.
As an
Thank
HR
you.
professional, I welcome your comments.
Thank
Nothing's
you.
changed except AI is now being used. But I go back to the day you have to actually use books, paper
Okay. Take
books.
care. Bye.
Right.